Let's bring in our political panel. Joe Trippi served as Howard Dean's campaign manager and is a Fox News contributor. Matt Schlapp is chairman of the American Conservative Union and former White House political director under President George W. Bush. Gentlemen, welcome. Let's talk first about Rick Perry. Joe, his campaign last time around 4 years ago started with such promise, then went down in flames. Do you count him out this time?
I wouldn't count him out, but he doesn't have a whole lot of room for error, John. As you point out, he had a horrible experience last time, a bunch of gaffes, and just looked like he was completely unprepared. It really damaged him. He never recovered from it. And you know, first impressions it's tough to overcome that, particularly in a field that's this strong and with this many candidates in it. But look, don't count him out at all. I just think if he has any errors, it's going to confirm what people said last time. People aren't going to be willing to take another chance on him. So he's got to come out of the gate strong and stay strong. I think he's got the ability to do that. And by all accounts, his early trips into Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, those places, he's getting good reviews. So I do think he'll get a second look. I would not count him out.
Matt, the last Republican president was a longtime governor of Texas. Is there room for a second governor of Texas at the White House?
Yeah, and matter of fact, what's interesting about this race is there's so many candidates that some states have multiple candidates. You have two prominent candidates, Ted Cruz and Rick Perry from Texas. You have two prominent candidates from Florida, two big money states for Republicans. In Florida, you have Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. You know, so definitely Texas is going to play a big role, and that he's not handicapped by that at all. I think the problem for Rick Perry, I completely agree with Joe. The benefit for Rick Perry is he's done it before, and for him and Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee and those people who have run for president before, the second time out, is certainly in Republican primary battles, is always helpful. The bad news for Rick Perry is that since he ran before, we have all these new names that have come on the stage, and it's about Carly Fiorina, and it's about Marco Rubio, and it's about Rand Paul, it's about Ted Cruz, Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, all these new names, and it's going to be very hard for him to now say that he's the fresh new voice of the party, which I think it's really seeking.
Well, staying with you for the minute, Matt, let's talk about that. I mean, obviously a huge part of the presidential race is money and the ability to collect it. When you have so many Republicans, and as you point out, a couple of them come from the states of Texas and Florida.
That's right.
Do they sort of spread out the money supply so thin that it eventually hurts the nominee?
Well, you know, John, this might not come as a surprise to you, but there is a lot of money to go around, and there's a lot of donors in Republican and conservative circles to spread around these candidates. I think Ted Cruz has really done a great job in nailing down some big funders on the outside who are going to support his super PAC and other efforts. For Rick Perry, one of the problems he has, and, you know, let's just be candid about it, he's no longer an office holder. So, you know, that always helps when you're raising money with folks, the fact that you're sitting in an office and you're relevant to them. When you're not sitting in office, it's harder. But then again, Jeb Bush hasn't been sitting in office for a decade, and he's going to raise record amounts of money. So there's enough money to go around. The real question is, when does this race start to narrow down? And I think you're really going to start to see this happen come the summer months. So a lot of Republicans are fretting that there's too many candidates. Don't worry. The natural marketplace political reactions are going to happen, and the field will narrow.
All right. He's got, Joe, he can point to the fact that, you know, 8 of the fastest growing cities in the country, 8 of the 15, I think, are in Texas. It's a state of 27 million people. Had phenomenal economic growth over his terms in office. Yeah, he's not in office anymore, but he has a pretty good track record on which to run.
Well, no, he certainly has a record to run. He had one last time, and the problem was no one heard about it because of the mistakes that were made. I agree. This time, it's got more to do with the breadth of the field and the talent of the field. It's a much different race this time, and he's got a second chance to make that case. But I don't think he has any room for mistakes, and I think it's going to be tough for him to get through with Rubio, with all these other governors, with Walker, other people in the race. But I do think he can have a big appeal in Iowa. Kind of candidate, his ability, retail politics in a small room is strong. I think they can react well to him, and he could put put together a surprise in Iowa, and that would go a long way if he can come out of the pack that strong.
Talk about a tough job getting through. Let's talk about the Democratic side. Former Rhode Island Senator and Governor Lincoln Chafee is joining the nominating race. In his announcement, Chafee insisted the U.S. economy would benefit by switching from the English system to the metric system. Listen.
Here's a bold embrace of internationalism. Let's join the rest of the world and go metric. I happen to live in Canada, and they completed the process. Believe me, it's easy. It doesn't take long before 34 degrees is hot. Only Myanmar, Liberia, and the United States aren't metric, and it will help our economy.
Matt, what do you think about that? Threatening the good old English measurement system as one of your campaign planks.
You know, John, every once in a while I kind of rethink whether or not I should be a Republican, and I listen to people like Link Chafee, and I remember why I am. You know, Earth to Link Chafee. This really is not going to connect to voters, and I wish him well, but seems strange to me. What's his role in the race, Joe?
Well, I mean, clearly, look, it's the most publicity the metric system has gotten in decades. So I think that's part of it. I don't see. Look, I believe Hillary Clinton could get a scare in the primaries. I don't think it'll be Lincoln Chafee who does that, although I guess anything's possible. But look, I have no idea why he has entered the race, particularly as a former Republican and former independent. It's going to be very difficult for him to get any credibility within the Democratic primaries with people like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Martin O'Malley, other Democrats that are running. I think it's going to be very tough for him, particularly if the metric system is his #1 plank. That's going to be a problem, too.
Yeah, we looked at the polls, and right now he is several thousand meters behind.
That's right.
Matt Schlapp, Joe Trippi.